So what is the Victorian era? That is an excellent question. Most basically, it was between the years of 1837 and 1901 when Queen Victoria ruled over England. Thereby its name. I know, it's so original. More importantly, it was a transformative era where a lot of basic ideas were formed that are still considered traditional today. Often when someone's like, oh, that's a traditional idea about gender roles or family or society, what they're actually saying is that that's a Victorian idea about that topic. So today we're going to be breaking down different aspects of Victorian life, and we can see a little bit of how it has impacted us. So if you want to learn more about that, then definitely stay tuned for today's video. My name is Ellie Dashwood, and this is my channel where we talk about history and literature. If you like either of those things, please subscribe. But first, a word from this video's sponsor. Playing June's Journey is one of my favorite ways to relax. It's a free-to-download hidden object game with excellent historical vibes. Set in the 1920s, you get to join the main character, June, as she investigates a murder. I love soaking up the glamour and romance of the visuals as I help search for clues. Searching decadent scenes for pretty objects is incredibly calming. Though my favorite part is having my own mansion and island estate. You get to improve the grounds with beautiful garden features, observatories, train stations, and more. Curating historic gardens is one of my favorite pastimes, I have to admit. Between improving my estate, searching for clues, and solving a mystery, the game makes me feel like quite the refined lady of adventure. You can download June's Journey for free by clicking the link in the description or scanning the QR code on screen. So we're going to be breaking down so many different aspects of Victorian culture here today, but first up, let's start with the middle class and Industrial Revolution. So the Industrial Revolution was already well underway by Queen Victoria's time. They had already invented things like steam power, but it was under her reign that it reached its peak, and so many things in society changed. We had people moving from the country into the city, we had factories booming, industry shooting up, and a lot of social issues arising from these demographic changes. One thing, there was a real dehumanizing of humans in the Victorian era. Efficiency was put above all else. A lot of employers lost that connection to their employees, and they started being okay with them, dying in their mills or getting permanently maimed as children. Now, it might seem today to be very basic to have worker safety laws, limits on how many hours you could work an employee, but no. Those are actually developments from out of the Victorian era that they had to fight over because it was seen as a huge government overreach for the government to go in and be like, hey, you can't have everybody losing their arms in your mill. They'd be like, why not? It's my job. They work here. They can be permanently maimed and out on the streets if I want. They had some real issues in the Victorian era, guys. We see issues with the Industrial Revolution really pop up in novels of the time. For example, Elizabeth Gaskell dives into it quite a bit in novels like North and South and Mary Barton. Now, something else we saw was a shift in culture from it being one of literature in the Regency era to it being one of science in the Victorian era, right? Because science equals Industrial Revolution equals governmental power equals they can take over the world as the British Empire. Science is where it is at now. And we definitely see that change of even like who's popular. So for example, in the Regency era, you had Lord Byron being like the #1 rock star ever. It's like, wow, he writes poetry. That's so hot. Where in the Victorian era, now scientists were incredibly hot. So for example, we see this in Elizabeth Gaskell's Wives and Daughters, where there are two sons of a family. One is a poet and one is a scientist. You'll never guess who is the better son. Now, of course, the Industrial Revolution had a massive impact when it came to class and money. If you've watched my video before on aristocracy and what happened to the aristocracy, then you know what happened to the aristocracy in this time period. So, for example, in the Regency, you had the upper class that the bulk of its money was coming from land ownership and tradition. They were the powers that be, and they had always been the powers that be, and they were always going to rule the country. Now, right below them, you had a small middle class that had made its money from trade and manufacturing, and then you had a massive lower class of, just poor people. But because of the Industrial Revolution, we saw the middle class that made its money from trade and manufacturing and industry suddenly blow up. We had so many people coming from the lower class up into the middle class, and they had this real love-hate relationship with the upper class. In so many ways, they were like, yeah, I want to be like them. I want to dress like them. I want to act like them. I want to be the cool kid now. But at the same time, they were like, but also that whole you guys ruling the whole country thing. Don't know how I feel about that. I might want the vote. So really, the middle class suddenly thought it should be the class that rules things, not those rich people. It's the middle class. They're where it's at. Now let's talk about gender roles in the Victorian era and the family. The Victorians had the idea of separate spheres. Basically, that a wife and mother has her sphere, which is the home and the children, and, she gets to order the cook what to make for dinner. Meanwhile, the husband had his sphere, which was outside of the house. Basically, politics and business and ruling the known world was his thing. Meanwhile, you could not cross between the spheres. So, for example, a woman wanting to vote was seen like, no, that is man's sphere. He gets to rule everything. Meanwhile, a man, if he came in and was like, you know what, I'm going to override what you ordered for dinner from the cook. The wife could be like, no, you're not. That is my sphere. You get to rule the world, but I get dinner. Women during this time period also were under a lot of pressure because they needed to be an angel in the home, or basically be the bright moral center that was there to offer their husbands comfort and love at every second, while also guiding them towards the morally correct decisions in life. It was a lot of pressure. Now, the Victorians were really taking these gender roles to a new extreme, a new level that previous generations had not. And one of the reasons for that was the rise of women's rights movements. It was direct opposition to this that made them really dig their heels in. You had much, much more radical women, such as them thinking that they were equal to men. This was shocking developments, guys. Shocking. Speaking of things that would be totally shocking to the Victorians, let's talk a little bit about morality and social change. So, the Victorians were incredibly Victorian when it came to issues like sex. First of all, they did not like to talk about it. Second of all, there were some ideas here. For example, a man could still cheat on his wife as he could throughout most all of English history. It was not seen as ideal, and he had to keep it low-key. But at the same time, it would have been like, oh, well, men will be men. It's not ideal, but it is what it is. Now, for women, it really depended on how conservative of a family they were raised in, how they would have seen this topic. For the ultra-conservatives is where you get that idea that you often hear with the Victorians, right? That a woman's not supposed to enjoy sleeping with her husband. Basically, she just has to lie there and think of the empire. Now, that would have been for only the ultra-conservative Victorians. The average Victorian, it was more like, yeah, women enjoy sleeping with their husbands when they're married, but we don't really talk about it. They did give their girls some level of sexual education before marriage, but most Victorian women still felt largely unprepared. Now, if you look at that very conservative ideology, you can see that it's kind of harsh. And that is one thing we definitely see throughout the Victorian era, is this low-key harshness in everything, in how they parent, and how they obviously are employers. It's just like, you can lose your hand in my mill. That's fine. That's harsh. And it really is the Victorians that we can thank for a lot of this stiff upper lip, life is harsh, you just keep going on sort of attitude that some people still have today. So that is a basic overview of the Victorian era. Let me know in the comments down below, which of these ideas do you think has impacted your life the most? I think we get an interesting mix of direct idea descendants, like we believe a version of this in society, or a direct reactionary to it, right? Like that's what people used to believe, and now we believe the exact opposite and we reject the Victorians. Whatever the case, the Victorians definitely left their mark on modern Western society. And let me know how it left its mark on you in the comments down below. And remember to check out June's journey by clicking the link in my description or by scanning my QR code. And as always, guys, keep being awesome, because you're awesome. Bye!